Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to The Back Row from What I Watched Tonight. It's my show to discuss movies I think are great with someone who happens to share the same opinion. My name is Matt Hudson, and joining me in the back row tonight is someone that Star Wars Sessions fans, they'll know as the King of Wales. And by the end of this show, I'm sure you're all going to as well. It's Luke Summerfield. How you doing, mate?
How you doing, buddy? Yeah, I'm good.
I'm doing well. It's always good to have royalty. In fact, it's the first time I've really had royalty on the show, real royalty. So, as I said, guys out there who know Star Wars Sessions will know Luke very well. Those who don't, this is Luke. He is Welsh, as you've heard. He also does Lego photography, and he's just started up a new adventure called 1/4 Portion. So rather than me tell the guys out there, what is it you do in the pop culture verse?
Well, Snicked 87 is where I do a lot of Lego and toy photography with a lot of editing and share other people's work and my stories and things. And then 1/4 Portion is something I've been mulling over for a while. And it's mostly Star Wars with news, memes, collectibles, sharing and bringing you portions of a galaxy far, far away. And hopefully bringing the fandom together.
Which is something that Luke is very much about in life, very positive, and which we stand that on the back row, which is exactly what we want. Yeah, we'll give all these social links out to find Luke's incredible photography and 1/4 Portion where you can get the best of the galaxy far, far away. But in terms of the back row, tonight, Luke and myself, we're going to be tasting man flesh and discussing The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, the movie that kicked off Sir Peter Jackson's Middle-earth trilogy. But before we hear what Luke has to say all about it, let's get started with the admin. So, as I mentioned, it's directed by Peter Jackson, who had directed The Frighteners, Heavenly Creatures, Brain Dead, and Bad Taste, amongst others, prior to this. And who does it star? Well, I'll give you a few of the names because there's a huge cast. Elijah Wood as Frodo Baggins, Sir Ian McKellen as Gandalf, Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn, Sean Astin as Samwise Gamgee, Billy Boyd as Pippin, Dominic Monaghan as Merry, Liv Tyler as Arwen, Kate Blanchett as Galadriel, Orlando Bloom as Legolas, John Rhys-Davies as Gimli, Sean Bean as Boromir, Ian Holm, God rest his soul, as Bilbo Baggins, and Christopher Lee, again, as Saruman. It premiered on December the 10th, 2001, and it was made for $93 million, and it brought in $887.8 million at the worldwide box office, which is incredible. Something else is incredible. Nominated for 13 Oscars. Best Picture, Director, Adapted Screenplay, Supporting Actor for Ian McKellen, Art Direction, Costume Design, Film Editing, Original Song and Best Sound. And it won for Cinematography, Makeup, Original Score and Visual Effects. So what's it about? It's set in Middle-earth and it tells the story of the Dark Lord Sauron who seeks the One Ring. The ring has found its way to a young hobbit called Frodo Baggins, and the fate of Middle-earth hangs in the balance as Frodo and his 8 companions, who become the Fellowship of the Ring, begin their journey to Mount Doom in the land of Mordor, the only place where the ring can be destroyed. So, for those who haven't seen The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, consider this your spoiler warning. Luke and myself, we're going to dive into every facet of the film, everything we loved, maybe some things we didn't, but if you haven't seen it, go and spend 7 hours watching it and then come back and listen to us. So one more time, spoilers. So with that, Luke, why on earth is this film one of your favourites of all time?
Well, it's a wonderful sequel to a little story called The Hobbit, and it's a perfect beginning to a trilogy. The set designs, the details, the acting, the locations, the cast, they all truly brought Middle-earth to life. Totally wonderful film.
Oh God, everything you've just said, as I'm sure we're going to absolutely just... I'll talk about tasting man flesh. We're going to taste all of that during this. You've got a deeper voice than I have, so don't rub it in.
Isildur!
That's it. And you're Welsh, so your voice has got a lot more lustre and timbre to mine, so it's going to sound better. But this came out in 2001. Did you see it when it came out, or were you later to the party?
Oh, I was very, very late to the party with Lord of the Rings, because I pretty much grew up like a hobbit on a farm. So I lived quite a sheltered life. I only discovered Star Wars through toys that were given to me through my cousin.
Nice.
I think I discovered Lord of the Rings the Fellowship of the Ring through when Return of the King was released.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on these really nerdy forums which I could access in school on the computers.
Yeah.
And there was all these different parts about Lord of the Rings, so that's how I discovered it that way. Then started getting hold of the films, then discovered that it was extended editions, and just got totally lost in the movies.
Also as a side note, Luke and myself, in preparation for this, have both watched the extended edition. So obviously the theatrical edition is swallowed up within that. So if you haven't seen the extended edition, then you may hear some new stuff here. But again, most of the stuff we'll be speaking about is in the theatrical version. So what's that, 2003 you saw? So did you go back and watch? I'm guessing you went back and watched The Fellowship before you saw Return of the King.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Otherwise, it could have been very confused. Like, what are they
very
fighting for? They've already done this.
And I remember seeing Return of the King in the cinema then. With it's probably the only film I've seen that had a break in the middle.
Really? Oh man, I don't remember there being a break in the middle of Return of the King. Because I remember I saw these films when they came out at the cinema. I would have been, by the time they came out, 16 by the time this film came out. And then they came out year on year, so 2002, 2003. So it kind of formed 3 years of my life, as it did the actors as well for this. But it's interesting that you found it on a nerdy forum in school when you look at it now and you think, this must have been everywhere. And I remember it was, but again, it depends on location. It depends on what you can get your hands on at the time. But I'm sure you're just glad that you actually managed to find it in the first place.
Oh, yeah, totally. What a wonderful trilogy.
Now, let's do it then, mate. Let's talk about the best moments. So, Lukey boy, this film is, like I mentioned, like 12 hours long. So there's probably a few things to pick out here. But, what's something, lead us off. What's one of your favourite moments from this like massive monster epic?
Oh, where'd you start?
I know.
Anything Hobbit related, when they're eating, smoking, having their second breakfast, drinking pints.
Comes in pints?
And any scene that Aragorn is in. One of my favourite moments, though, is a little conversation that Gandalf has with Frodo. And it's a speech he gives him, do not be so eager to deal out death and judgment.
Yes.
And you could see the look on Frodo's face then, as it's the turning point for Frodo as well. Even though he's grown up as a pure hobbit, Gandalf tries to keep everybody grounded. That's why you don't really see him showing off all his magic.
Oh, mate. Well, in that, people talk about the Hobbit trilogy, and I have issues with that. But going back, hearing that line, like as soon as you said that line again, it took me back to the scene in The Hobbit when Bilbo, he doesn't dish out death to Gollum, whereas like Frodo says, "I wish Bilbo had killed him in that cave." It taken back, the way they linked that up was really hot good. But yeah, Gandalf and Ian McKellen in this had so many wicked lines, like so many. Like a wizard as late he arrives exactly precisely when he means to. But the scene where you see that Frodo just like once pure, well, it's still pure Hobbit, but the ring is starting to consume him. You can see it during the film and obviously subsequent films. But in this one, you can see that the ring is very slowly, even though it's trying to get rid of it at every turn. It's taken a hold on him, and that's one of them. Where he's like, it seems out of context, our character for Frodo to wish like sort of want on like death or murder upon something, and the way Gandalf reins him in, mate, I love that moment.
Yeah, and the hobbits are so pure, and that's why they're like the ideal ring bearers, because they've lived such a sheltered, beautiful life. It takes a lot longer for the ring to consume the hobbit. Well, let you Sam.
And they're an unknown quantity as well. Nobody seems to know of them. Everyone's constantly surprised by them. And the way that the Shire is introduced, we find all of the hobbits, is one of my favourite moments in film. Like the introduction to the Shire, and when the tune concerning hobbits kicks in, like that beautiful, like the Shire theme is incredible. And you've got when they say the voiceover, like hobbits, we're ignored by the massives. The massives, they like food, they like drink, they like pipes. You get immediately, it's setting the scene for what these hobbits are about. It takes a couple of minutes. We see their lifestyle, we find everything about them.
Yeah.
And then when Bilbo says, there's always been a Baggins living here under the hill, and there always will be. I was like, oh, my heart's starting to hurt. That
No.
whole scene I watched with an involuntary smile the whole time. As soon as we go
Yeah,
to the Shire, the theme kicks in, and you just see how just idyllic it looks, and how perfect it looks. I just sat there beaming the whole time, mate.
I know. The brewing of ales,
Oh
pipeweed,
yes,
and good tilth earth for growing. Just a simple life. That's all they need.
yeah. And the way they brought that patch of land in New Zealand to life and made it. Honestly, I've never been to New Zealand, and I very much want to go. And this film acted as probably the best tourist advert for New Zealand they could have ever wanted. But I
Oh,
don't feel like I'm in New Zealand when I watch this film. That is the Shire.
you're in Middle Earth. That's the great thing about this film. It just transports you to another world.
And everywhere they go, even when they go to Lothlorien or wherever they want to go to, it doesn't feel like they're in the woods in around the corner in like Christchurch in New Zealand or whatever it is. It feels like they're in Middle Earth. It feels like they're in a different time, a different place. Obviously, the amount of effort that went into this film, these three films, is staggering. The amount of like we said off air, they shot these films back to back to back, years of their lives
No, I
committed
know.
to these three films, like the key core cast and Peter Jackson. Of course, Peter Jackson started writing this, I think, in 1997, 4 years before the film was released. So this was best part of almost a decade of his life. This took up, and just one of the things you mentioned. What was one of my favourite moments? Just to be vague to start or general to start with, just the scope of it, mate. The scope of this film is huge. Starting off
Oh,
with the battle where we see Isildur slice off Saruman's finger like he's at a deli counter, to when we see the Shire, to them going to Rivendell and everywhere else they go to. And then they're talking about Gondor and all these other places and Mordor. And it's like they're building, and I know obviously it's set, spoiler, on Tolkien's books, but they're building this world and this lore out effortlessly. And the scope of this thing, mate, it gets me every time how big they made this feel.
oh, I know. And then, especially when you're in the mines of Moria
That's it.
and you see the halls in the great city. Oh, incredible sets as well as the real life locations. The sets they built, amazing.
The fact that they managed to build those where they did as well is incredible. The Mines of Moria, that was what I was trying. I think where's the other place they went to? That fairly big scene they went to, and yeah, the Mines of Moria, mate. That entire thing, from when they have to get into the mines, when they arrive at the door of Durin, to when they leave after Gandalf's taken on the Balrog. Sorry, that whole scene in Moria, mate. What are you thinking about that? The whole thing, mate.
You're already on edge from when they get there, and this isn't a mine; it's a tomb.
That's
And
it.
you see all the dead dwarfs everywhere. Then we get into the tomb of Dwalin, and the book has got a slice through it, and you can see it's beautiful, and you can see the writing has slowly slipped off as the author of that book has passed away,
Hmm.
and then the silence is broken by Pippin, who knocks a carcass down into the tombs. Fool of a took.
That's it, and that
And
sound
then
design is mental on that
that
moment.
sound, yeah, like the Jumanji style drums.
Yes, boom.
It's all quiet, and then you think, oh, here we go. And you could already tell Gandalf's petrified because the Balrog.
Gandalf standing there like, oh, he's like, no, come on, man. He had one job to not touch anything, and
Yeah,
and again, it ties in so well thematically and narratively with the Hobbit, because that's Barlin's tomb, and of course we met Barling in the Hobbit trilogy, and the corpse of the book is Ori, one of the dwarfs in the Hobbit trilogy, the one of the younger dwarfs that's him, which is confirmed that it's there.
Ori is the keeper of the book.
Yes, that's him. That's his corpse there.
You've just blown my mind.
Honestly, mate, and I obviously found out after the Hobbit trilogy came out, and people are saying, oh, two of them are actually in the Lord of the Rings. I was like, well, I know Balin was mentioned. Who's the other one? And then they pointed out. I was like, God damn! But like the way that Gandalf reads it, like, drums in the deep, we cannot get out. A shadow moves in the dark, we cannot get out. They are coming. And as soon as Merry knocks that armor down the wall, when you hear the drums, that's when you're like, oh. And yeah, they have a cave troll, and that fight as well in that little room, awesome. As I think is that the only time we ever see Aragorn use his bow?
I think so.
I can't think of him using it ever again in either of the other films.
I'm not sure if you might use it quickly at the Battle of Helm's Deep,
That would make sense.
but I don't think. I think he just commands the elf archers at Helm's Deep. I think that's the only time he uses a bow.
Yeah, it looked odd seeing him use a bow next to Legolas with his unlimited arrows.
Yeah, it's literally, you could see that as the film goes on, Aragorn becomes less of a ranger.
Yeah.
And you can see his foreshadowing going towards picking up the sword and becoming the king.
The way they introduce him as well, like Strider, that guy's been eyeing you since we arrived, and we obviously were meant to believe that this hooded guy in the corner of the prancing pony is a baddie, he's a bad dude. Turns out it's Strider, who we then find out is a Isildur's heir, which seems to take certainly Boromir, but most other people off guard as well. He's the heir to Gondor, and yeah, it's true. You're right. There's the arcs in this film as well, like how. I mean, the Hobbits, well, even Merry and Pippin get arcs. I mean, they start off as jokers with the fireworks, and all they want is second breakfast, and they're obviously they're clumsy, knocking stuff over in Barney's tomb. And then by the end of it, when they're in the woodlands, and they can see Frodo's hiding, and they're like, "Come over here," because the orcs and the Uruk-hai are going to get him. He's hiding, and he's like, "No, I'm not coming over there." And they step out, and they're like, "Hey, look over here, guys! Come and get us." That's their arc, and this is only the first bloody film of three. Everybody gets an arc. I mean, other than Sam, who was, but then again, no, Sam started. Yes, he was scared of approaching Rosie, but he was always there for Frodo, like hiding outside the of Bag End. He's always there, and at the end he still was as well. But that doesn't mean he's less of a character in this film at all. I think everybody gets an arc.
Eavesdropping. I be dropping no eaves.
That's it. I heard something about a ring and a Dark Lord and the end of the world. Just in that scene in Moria, Frodo gets stabbed by the cave troll, and he's saved by Mithril, which earlier on they name dropped Thorin. Thorin gave this to Bilbo. Again, we saw that in the Hobbit trilogy. But Frodo doesn't have much luck. He gets stabbed at Weathertop by the ring wraith, and he gets stabbed by a cave troll. And that's when they have to make haste to the bridge of Khazad Dûm. I like that battle scene though, when it's just like carnage in that little room and the cave, and then the Balrog appears. That's like the beginning of the end now of the film, was when the Balrog, the demon of the ancient world, appears, and even when Gandalf's like papping himself, that's when you know that there's trouble.
Yeah, and the infamous line then, "You shall not pass." And then as he strikes down his staff, he repeats himself, and then they fall into the pit.
Just remember, you've got kids in the house, so probably best not to scream at that.
That's one of the things, every time they have a walking stick and we're out in the woods, that's one of the things they do. They pick it up and they shout, "You shall not pass."
Fly, you fools. Oh, mate. And that's when you know it's impacted, because that's one of the most famous lines of the last few decades in film. You shall not pass. Everyone knows that scene. You see the GIF.
Yeah.
You know exactly where it's from. And you know, the way Mckellen says it's something which you can easily shout out yourself. But I love that scene, like when the Balrog rears up, it shows its full self, and you're like, wow, Gandalf's just standing, they're not taking any crap from this guy. And then when they get out on the somber music, and that shot of Frodo when he turns around and he's just got one tear falling down his cheek. How did you feel then as a young Welsh lad seeing that scene? Actually, had you read the books beforehand?
No. That's one thing that's on my wish list, is I've got to get my butt in gear and read the books.
Okay, so that does actually lead in. So when you saw that scene and you think, okay, Gandalf, he's taken this fall down, and then obviously he grabs Gandalf. What are you thinking then? Like, Gandalf's dead.
To this day, it still gets me. And I know he comes back as Gandalf the White, but literally on the rewatch of the day, tears in my eyes. Yeah, I was gone.
And that's down to the acting, obviously, obviously the gravitas of the situation, but the music as well, or the lack of at times as well, is just perfect.
And it was wonderful acting from Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd, where you see them, they're totally in bits, and then I think it's Boromir that grabs them. Yep. So they're almost, the hobbits, they almost get treated like children, even though they're grown men, because they're so small. It's even when they duel when they're practicing their sword fighting, they treat them like kids, but then the kids take them down.
Yes, right. Again, almost like they're having like a tickle fight almost on the floor. But you're right, because Boromir's like, look, for Christ's sake, let them have a minute's grief. And Aragorn's like, no, look, we're going to be swarmed by orcs soon. We've got to get the hell out of here. I really like that scene, and it's funny because again, rewatching it the other day, I knew that scene was coming, but they pack so much into this first film. Even the theatrical edition they do, but in the extended edition, obviously where they got a little bit more time to breathe, they pack so much in that by the time you get to the halfway through, and you think, wow, right, okay, we've still got the Mines of Moria to come, which is a huge, or even before that, the on Caradhras with the snow avalanche. You've got the Mines of Moria, and then after that, you've got the climactic battle as well. They pack so much in to this, and I think that's a testament to the filmmaking, mate, that they could get so much in. But to me, anyway, and clearly you, it never feels like overstuffed or long or boring.
No, it's a wonderful story. You don't even notice how long the film is. Mm-hmm. You just get totally engrossed in the story. And that's another scene I love is the mountain pass of Caradhras. Yeah. Because then you hear Sauron's voice on the wind. But I've never noticed until this recent rewatch, because I've got a bigger TV now, Legolas is walking on top of the snow.
I never knew that. I never noticed that before until I saw it online like a week before, and they were like, "Oh, watch Legolas." By the way, I was like, "Oh, why?" And then, yeah, as you say, he's just walking on it.
Yeah, so like as a feather walking on the snow. Everybody else is freezing and dying of death and dying of hypothermia, and he's just walking along on top of the snow,
whistling to himself. I would help, but nah. Yeah, I love that. That's just before that, you get some beautiful shots of New Zealand as the Fellowship depart and they make their journey. We find out Gandalf doesn't want to take that. He's dead set against going through the Mines of Moria, and that's when they take the Mountain of Caradhras. And you can hear Saruman like you're gonna, which way you're gonna go, mate? You're gonna go through Moria, or you're gonna try and go over this ridiculous mountain. I never noticed Legolas on there either as well. But what did you think about that scene? But about the Caradhras scene, because it's like the idea of like a wizard throwing his voice across the wind doesn't seem out of place in a film like this for me. But what do you think about that?
Oh, I loved it, and then you could see he's not trying to actually bring down the mountain; he's just causing a massive thunderstorm, which is striking and making avalanches. But you can see that Gandalf is totally determined not to go through Moria, as you can see why, as we just said.
I thought Gandalf was a bit tougher than that, but clearly not. No, he's afraid of a bit of fire. No, yeah, but it's great because it builds up that tension. Because if you haven't read the book, and I read these books, my old man, my governor, my gaffer, as Sam would call him, gave me these books when I was like 9. He's like, right, read them. So I don't know if it's like a rite of passage or something like that, because my brother, who's older than me, read them, and my dad and my uncle and both uncles would have read them. But man, I had to read. I didn't have to, but I read these like cover to cover when I was like 9, so I knew what was coming.
Yeah, I've read The Hobbit. Mm-hmm. Whereas my mum was a big reader, my dad wasn't, and we were mostly outside on the farm, so I totally missed out on a lot of good reading. But
you got yourself fit at the same time, though.
Yeah.
We mentioned the Fellowship. What about when the Fellowship is actually created in Rivendell, where they have the secret council meeting, and we find out Frodo's going to take it? But I mean, again, classic moments, classic lines of dialogue in that. Again, rewatching it, I don't forget about scenes, but when it happened, I was just like, yes, another wicked scene. I'm sat there glued to it.
Oh, when they at the Council of Elrond.
Yes.
Yeah, when they all come together. Apparently they haven't been together for a while, have they? So it's a coming together of all the races.
That's it, yeah. It's like the first time. It's like it brought this, the one ring to bring them all together. And I love how that's that shot in the reflection of the ring of everybody arguing, like the dwarves, the elves, and the humans arguing. And it's almost as if the ring is just like watching them the whole time. And you get Sean Bean, Boromir, obviously, one that's not simply walking to Mordor, and just how Elrond sets up the scene. Do you know what I mean? He's just like, he needs to be cast back into the fiery chasm from whence it came, and we find out that actually Elrond was there when Aragorn's bloodline relative Isildur didn't throw it in, so he's got his own reasons for wanting this gone.
Boromir is already being ensnared by the ring's power straight away. The weakest of all races, men.
Yeah, no, that's the same in any walk of life, to be fair. But Gandalf, he utters the black speech of Mordor in Rivendell, which never happens. And Boromir.
It's the inscription on the ring, isn't it, that he speaks?
I think, because he says in the Shire, he said, I won't say those foul words here. But when it came to it, it's like the only way to get everyone's attention, especially like Elrond, is just to spit these words out. And Boromir is like properly seduced by it by then.
They begin to set up the Fellowship, and you have Gimli tries to strike the ring with his axe, and his axe shatters to bits. So then we learn that the ring can only be destroyed where it was created, in Mount Doom, Mordor.
Yes, and it's little things like that where we already know the power of the ring from the beginning of the film, but like Gimli, bloody Welshman, tries to take out the ring through brute force. Doesn't work. And he's like, you idiot! It has to go back from where it came, which is Mount Doom. And what got me as well is that you've got all these warriors, including Aragorn, including Legolas, Gimli, and all that. Elrond himself as well. Like, none of them actually volunteer. That when he says like somebody needs to take this to Mount Doom, like I say, it reflects in the reflection of the ring. We see the mark of him. None of them are like, I'll do it. They're all fighting amongst each other, and that's obviously when Frodo says, I'll do it. And the look on Gandalf's face is, and that's why Ian McKellen got a nod for best supporting actor, because it's just like the way he sells everything. Like, the way he's almost like the one thing he didn't want, but at the same time he expected it. But it's interesting that none of these great warriors volunteered. It took the Hobbit, like the smallest ones there, to step up.
That's why they like the ideal ring bearers, because they're so pure.
Yeah, exactly.
Untainted by the wars of Middle Earth, apart from Bilbo.
Apart from him, of course, some of them. All they want is their strawberries, their beer, their pipes, and their and their gardens.
Oh, I love it. But and then you find out then that they're all agreeing to go with Frodo. So we start building the Fellowship, and it's Sam is there again, eavesdropping.
Yes, it. You followed us to this like secret meeting, and then he's like, "Yep." That's what I find fun. As soon as Frodo says they will do it, everyone's like, "Yeah, actually, I'll come with you. You've got my sword and my bow and my axe," which at the time is actually an epic moment. But it just
you got to say axe properly though. You got to axe.
I can't get that throatiness. Axe. I can do Legolas and my bow. I can do the softer sides of it and my bow. And my axe. But so as soon as someone else, it's like in school or in college, like when the teacher says, who wants to volunteer? As soon as somebody else does, like, I'll do it as well, actually. Nobody wants to be the first. But mate.
I'm Spartacus.
That's it. Yeah. 9 companions. You shall be the Fellowship of the Ring. It's a good thing he calls them that and not something stupid.
I love Pippin's line as well when he goes, the mission, quest, thing, and then Mary's just looking at him like, oh, here we go.
And it doesn't ruin the scene, does it? I mean, you get that big epic moment, the Fellowship's created, and it's like, so when are we going on this mission, quest? Bang. It doesn't change, it doesn't like, you're not like, oh, he didn't need to do that. It worked because it's in character. And then the character moments later when Merry and Pippin create that distraction for Frodo, all of that plays into it, and I love it. Yeah, can you imagine if Elrond had like, you shall be the Golden Gang or something like that? The Groovy Gang, the Golden Gang. Yeah.
And then when they finally leave, and then Gandalf's behind Frodo. Frodo's like, which way is it, left or right?
That's it.
He just guides him on his way.
Left. Good question though. Gandalf, which way is Mordor? Left. And the way he taps him on his left shoulder as well.
I love it.
What about characters like Arwen when she's introduced? Because after Frodo's been stabbed on Weathertop, which I'm sure we'll mention that. But in terms of other like secondary characters, if you could call it that, in an ensemble, actually I'll take that back. It's an ensemble. What did you think about Arwen and her intro and what she goes on to do?
Well, I totally love it when Arwen turns up, because if you notice, as they've left the Shire and the ring wraiths are starting to chase everybody, there's a lot of darkness throughout the film.
Yep.
And if you notice, there's brief moments of light. There's a little bit with Gandalf. You look at Saruman, and his light is fading. He's not so white.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Arwen turns up in the forest to save Frodo, it's stunning that the forest is so dark and gloomy, and then her light just shines through. Same as the light of Galadriel.
Yes.
It's totally beautiful.
Yeah, they played those off really well, and it didn't come across as hokey either. Because we'd heard about Arwen before, and the way she puts a knife a sword to Aragorn's neck. I'm like, who's this? And it's Arwen. It's like, what's this? It's a ranger caught off guard. And then we get another. Again, this is just full of another moment in this film where obviously the ring wraiths are pursuing Arwen because she's got Frodo. She's going to take him back to heal him. And then we get the scene in the river where she's crossed the river. The ring wraiths are on the other side. She draws her sword. If you want him, come and claim him. Like, that is just a wicked moment.
And then she totally throws that spell down and it causes the horses in the river to wipe out the ring wraiths.
Yeah, it's just moments like that which are, again, they're like etched now into like cinematic history. And this film has got a bunch of them. We've already, and I think there's even more we haven't spoken about as well, of course. But just that scene in particular, that's one of the money shots of the entire film. That's a big trailer moment at the end. And again, we think, oh bloody hell, Frodo's dead again. But he wakes up in Rivendell, and everything's all right. And apart from when everyone's like, that ring ain't staying here, and then we go on to the fellowship being created. But yeah, I mean, there's so many. The character cast is so big, but I always felt that everybody got their fair share. Like Galadriel, you mentioned Galadriel. Her role in this film is, it's smaller, but she has a presence, I think.
So, could Galadriel see into the future?
Well, she kind of says, doesn't she? She says things that have been, things that have come to pass, things that are going on now, and things that haven't yet happened, basically, isn't she?
Yeah, but she was quite certain on the gifts that she gives out. They're very specific. Yes. Frodo gets the light of
Erendil.
Sam gets the rope.
What was the rope used for again?
They use it in the Two Towers.
So they do, yes.
Clamber down some of the rock faces.
That's it. Because I was thinking, rope, what's he going to do with that? It's like, it's a bit morbid. Wow.
Go on, mate, hang yourself.
Yes, give him some credit, Christ. That's right. As it, Legolas gets the bow, Pippin gets a dagger, and Merry. Sam gets his rope. And Aragorn, he's already got, obviously, Arwen's immortality, basically, that necklace. And then there's Gimli, is what I found like the most sweet, because obviously the dwarves and the elves famously don't get on, and Gimli originally just said, I just want to look at the lady once more, and she gives him that beautiful smile when he's all sheepish. Then we find out that he wanted one of her hairs, and she gave him 3. It's like, oh, nice one, Gimli, bless him.
Oh, yeah, and he said she's fairer than all the stones beneath the earth. Yeah. All the gems beneath the earth.
Is that how Welsh guys court ladies?
Yeah, especially the bearded ones.
Yeah. Okay, I'm missing Summerfield's lucky lady then.
Oh, she's beardless and beautiful.
Yeah. I like Gimli. I've got John Rhys Davies. He's Welsh. You haven't had to bump into him at all, have you? Just like, you never know.
Well, there was this one time I hadn't long passed my driving test, and I was in Sainsbury's, not far from the Mumbles, outside of Swansea. And I had some friends in the car, and I went in to pay for my petrol. This was before pay at the pumps. It must have been around 2004, 2005. And I looked to my left as I'm paying, and it was John Rhys Davies.
No.
I was instantly taken back to Lord of the Rings. I was taken back to Indiana Jones, and I just couldn't speak. I was just there with my mouth open, staring. Then I stare at the woman behind the till and stare back at him. And then I just walked back to the car in total shock. I was like, I just bought petrol next to Gimli, and I couldn't even. I just was lost for words.
Oh, mate, you should have.
Because I know he's moved to New Zealand, but he does pop back now and again because he's from a little Welsh town called Ammanford.
Mm-hmm.
I know he used to come back for certain Comic Cons and things.
Mm-hmm. I never knew he moved over there.
Yeah, apparently he lives in New Zealand, doesn't he?
Nice, but I never knew that. I can see why. I just thought, because everyone always says about New Zealand, everybody's connected to someone by one person, everyone knows each other. I was like, well, maybe everyone in Wales, surely Luke Summerfield's bumped into Gimli at some point. Turns out he has.
Yeah, I don't think he lived. He did. don't think he lived in Wales for very long, man.
It's funny because I remember reading a story online about John Rhys Davies. He's like, there's this one time I was buying petrol in Sainsbury's Swansea, and the King of Wales was behind me, and I was so dumbstruck I couldn't say anything. I just walked out.
Love it.
That happened.
Yeah, and I got back in the car with my friends, and they were just like, "Oh, shut up!" I said, "Look," and we watched him come out, and then we all were just almost awestruck.
That's when you need a Summerfield selfie, mate. But no, I know what you mean. I've seen people like that before, and you think, I don't really want to. But there is that kind of like, but I also think, I don't really want to ask for a picture in case they told me to get lost or something like that.
Yeah, and he's quite a serious thespian and actor, isn't he? So
exactly. And you think, well, I don't want to get in the wrong. I don't want to watch Lord of the Rings and think, I hate Gimli now. I wish someone had tossed him off the bridge of Khazad-dûm. No one tosses a dwarf after all. But about Galadriel looking into the future, she invites Frodo, doesn't she, to look into like the mirrored water, and you see the scouring of the Shire and Sauron's eye. And in the book, the scouring of the Shire happens.
Does it happen?
Yeah, like it's different. It's Saruman orders it, and he's there. And I think actually that may be where he dies in the book, in the scouring of the Shire. Obviously, it doesn't happen in the films, but the fact that they alluded to it was pretty cool. And then she says, the fellowship is breaking. It has begun. He shall try to take the ring. You know of whom I speak. One by one, it will destroy them all. So that's when we think, to your point, can Galadriel see the future? To a point, I think she can, because unless she was just stating the obvious, unless she'd seen Boromir lusting after the ring, and she's like, he is going to try and take it. But the fact is, like, the fellowship's breaking, and then he offers her the ring. That bit's awesome. Like the way she changes, mate.
Yeah, when she turns into like some sort of crazy demon ghost.
Yeah.
You shall have a queen.
The more powerful, or whatever. She basically would corrupt basically the end of the world. I love that. I love the fact that, and because Gandalf as well, he's like, you cannot give this to me, blah blah, at the beginning of the film. So little moments like that just shows off the power of the ring, and by the end of the trilogy, just what Frodo and Sam had to endure and like carry along the way. And then she says, Frodo, only you can do this. Even the smallest person can change the course of the future, which gives 5'6" me an awful lot of hope going forward. But yeah, I think she. Do you think she can? Because I think she can, or at least get not echoes, but I think she gets glimpses of the future.
Yeah, I think she sees it from a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view, I think she does. Yeah. And she was kind of right to a point as well.
But doesn't Galadriel wear one of the rings?
Yes, she does. Yeah. She says because Frodo was looking at her, wasn't he? And she was like, "This is one of the rings made for us lot."
Yeah. Because I never got that. Then how? I thought the rings could control. Was it only the human rings that could be controlled by Sauron? Well,
that was the one ring, wasn't it? That was the ring that he forged in secret.
Yeah, but there's one ring to rule them, one ring to bind them.
That's it. And one, and then the other part of the poem as well. Yeah. Trying to think, that's the one bit I didn't write down. I don't think, like, one of the most important parts of the film. One ring to rule them, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. So basically, that ring can do everything. Basically.
Interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having one like that. But what about some of the other moments? Because again, I know you've got about 17 pages of notes, but like, what else is it about this film which is just floating the boat?
I think we should talk a bit more about Aragorn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the legend that is Viggo Mortensen.
Oh, fire away, mate.
What? Apparently, Viggo Mortensen was a very late casting.
Yes.
And his first day on set was the Battle of Weathertop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was Stuart Townsend was cast beforehand, but he was deemed to be too young.
Ah, interesting.
Imagine being him now.
I couldn't imagine anyone else as the role, though.
No, and there was other people they wanted. I think they tried to get Russell Crowe twice for the role. But he was like, I don't want to do it. Daniel Day-Lewis was offered the role as well, which he's one of the GOAT actors, one of the greatest of all time. But you see Viggo Mortensen in that role, mate.
If you think Last of the Mohicans, then I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, he can do anything, that man. But then you just look at Viggo Mortensen, he has it. He's just got the look. He's got
he looks like a king of old.
Exactly, even like down to like the chin. like the chiseled jaw and stuff like that, and the way he can grow a beard. I know it sounds really stupid, but like the piercing eyes, like everything about him. And he can be the tough guy, but he can also have like the vulnerabilities which he shows with Arwen and that. It's just a brilliant bit of casting.
If you closed your eyes and sketched a drawing of King Arthur, it'd probably end up looking like Aragorn.
I don't disagree, mate.
And Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn, I mean.
Of course, yeah. No, nobody else is. Yeah, no, mate. Everything he does is just. He's got so many badass moments in this film, hasn't he? And like softer moments too.
But apparently, he was one of the greatest swordsmen the stunt coordinators ever worked with. He did all his own stunts.
Yeah.
He used to go hiking in his costume to give it a bit more of a weathered look.
He used to stitch it up.
He's just a legend.
He was proper. He used to get so into character, and that's what I love about even like a 3-year shoot or 2-year shoot. The fact that he took this character, he became the character. And I know everybody took their role seriously, but he really did become the character, and
he would even sharpen a sword in back in his hotel and sleep with his sword.
I'd be too scared to do it because I'd cut something off.
I think there's a story about. I think he almost got arrested because he went to like a fast food place in costume with the sword. And I think the police were called because there's this guy brandishing a sword.
This sweaty, dirty-looking man with a massive sword is just asking for a whopper. Yeah, I think I'd back away as well. Well, mate, honestly, everything he does, like from his introduction to his sword fight, which is excellent, to how he is with Arwen. There's a brilliant shot of Arwen and Aragorn on a bridge, and they're speaking Elvish to each other. Firstly, the scene is brilliant. Like the way Arwen, she has that immortality basically, but she won't face all of the ages of the world alone, and she chooses a mortal life just to be with Aragorn in that one lifetime, which is beautiful. And a great shot of them center framed in the shot on that bridge is just beautiful. And that's what I love about it. They didn't just make him the kind of badass who stands up to the Uruk-hai by himself, which I'm going to mention later on, or can like do a baseball bat swing and knock a sword out of his way, and can throw fire into the face of the ringwraiths. He also has these moments which round out the character a bit more than, okay, this guy's just a grizzled badass.
It's like when he comes face to face with Boromir in the room with the painting and the shards of Narsil, the sword is broken, and there's an air to Aragorn when he's in Rivendell, where he grew up. He's so calm and just totally different to the kings of old. Yeah. Especially his ancestors.
Yeah, especially those guys, yeah.
But did you notice in the extended edition as well, you see his mum's grave?
I didn't see that, no.
In the extended edition, you get a scene where Aragorn visits his mother's grave.
How did I miss that? What happens? Obviously,
and he pulls the ivy off her. It looks like a statue of Mary. She's hooded. You know, it's like
yes,
Saint
I did.
Mary's.
Yes. I remember the scene where he's pulling the ivy away.
That's apparently his mother's statue.
Wow.
She brought him to Rivendell when he was a child.
Wow. I didn't know that. I've learned something new today. Thanks, mate. I remember the scene. I was like, what's he doing with that? But was he just start doing housekeeping? But now that adds even more to that scene, and because Boromir he finds the shards of Narsil, and like, he's like, the blade that cut the ring from Sauron, and he holds it with this kind of awe, and he's just it's just a broken heirloom, and throws it on the floor. And Aragorn doesn't react with any kind of malice or anger. He just very calmly picks it up, puts it back, and like you say, to your point, he's almost like has this like Zen-like quality when he's there.
But you can imagine that's why Boromir the way he is when you eventually meet his father, the Steward of Gondor.
Yeah, but and again, his brother's like Faramir is a bit more like he's slightly more level-headed. But Boromir is Sean Bean, isn't it? And on Boromir, I think Sean Bean played him very well, and he was the right. Again, it's easy to say in hindsight, like, that was the best pick for them. I think Sean Bean was a great choice for the role of Boromir, but I like how they played Boromir off from his start, because he gets an arc as well, very late on in the game, but he does get an arc. So Boromir, not only did he look dashing in purple, but I liked him and how he and Aragorn almost like butted heads and didn't get on at times. And there was a brilliant scene where both of those, Aragorn and Boromir, they're fighting over Gondor and the will of men. And Aragorn says, I wouldn't take the ring within 100 leagues of your city. Even though that Aragorn is the heir. But the way those two butt heads, especially when Boromir realises who Aragorn is, whereas Aragorn kind of sees the hope in the situation, kind of Boromir sees none. I love how they have that kind of a yin and yang dynamic. But I mean, I know we're going to get on to the end soon, but the end scene. Sorry, but Boromir as a character, what do you think about him?
Well, I always had a fascination with Sean Bean because growing up, I used to love the show Sharp.
I always watched that as well, mate.
Sharp?
Yeah. Richard Sharp.
So I've always admired Sean Bean as an actor. So when I saw it that he was in this humongous movie franchise, I was over the moon. Yeah. But there's an interest in he's the character who's probably tempted by the ring the most, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
He's straight as soon as he's there at the council. He's the ring is already taken a hold of him because it knows men are the weakest, and then he is probably one of the weakest for it.
And he gets his hands on it, doesn't he? And in the snow when Frodo drops it and Boromir actually holds it up and it's Aragorn is like, give the ring to Frodo now. And later on, Boromir basically tries to attack Frodo, give me the bloody ring, basically. And then he has his redemption.
I see your mind.
That's it, I see your mind. Okay, and then how he switches from like basically possessed Boromir to extremely remorseful Boromir when he's been teased. He's like, Frodo, I didn't mean it, I'm sorry.
But that's the thing with Boromir. He was a hero. He wasn't a bad man. It's just he was very susceptible to the ring.
Yeah, he loved Gondor.
As soon as he's near the ring has got a hold of him.
Yeah, you're right. He's a hero. He's a steward of Gondor. Like when he's describing the White City of Gondor, the way he says it with so much like passion and love in his eyes. And I did think, you ain't going to be seeing it again, mate. But it's nice to hear you talking about it. And you can just tell that he's an accomplished like swordsman, and he's done things and seen things and achieved things. And it's just like the tragic fall of him. Yeah. Talking about the fall of Boromir, let's talk about that, mate, because that is, again, for someone who hasn't read the book, whether or not that came as a surprise to you or not, but the final battle now when Saruman is unleashed the Uruk-hai, because they will taste man flesh.
Man
flesh. And they're after the Fellowship, and it's like from the beginning, basically, of that is Frodo's walking alone, and Boromir is collecting sticks, and he finds him, and he's like, Frodo, let me borrow the ring. I can use it for good. And of course, Frodo puts the ring on. Boromir loses his mind, and then we get the brilliant scene of Aragorn when he turns around basically and sees the Uruk-hai and he faces them all down. I love that when he's just like, "Well, I'm going to raise my sword and I'm going to take you."
Probably one of my favourite sword fights in the whole trilogy.
Because this was a lot. This film itself was a lot more. I don't want to say practical because obviously you get things like Helm's Deep, but there's a lot less animation or CGI in these films. And I think Viggo Mortensen said he prefers this first film for that reason. It was a lot more of the gang all together. It was a lot more on set and a lot more actually like sword to sword fighting. Like everyone was there. And I get what he's saying. And obviously Legolas, Gimli join the fight. But it's Boromir, isn't it? He's arrived to save Merry and Pippin. The Uruk-hai are told, look, by Saruman, he tells Lurtz, big boy Lurtz, the main Uruk-hai, he tells them, like, keep the halflings alive, kill the rest. But one of them didn't get the memo, and he's about to cut Merry and Pippin in half. And Boromir arrives, and one of my favourite things is he doesn't, before killing him, he kicks the Uruk-hai directly in the nuts. It's like, if you watch it again, he just absolutely up and unders him and then kills him. The Horn of Gondor sound, and I don't mean to list it off here, but he sounds the Horn of Gondor. There's a brilliant overhead shot of all of the Uruk-hai rushing to get to Boromir as he's taken them all down. And of course, then Lurtz walks into view in slow motion. You see him put his arrow back and shoots Boromir, and from then on, we get Boromir the hero. But
he keeps going. That's the amazing thing about it. He keeps getting up till his last breath. So he takes 3 arrows in all.
He takes 3 arrows, and then that's enough. And before Lurtz can finish him off, because you get the really menacing shot of Lurtz standing over him, ready to finish him with his bow, before Aragorn saves him. But for somebody who hadn't read the books then, and I'm assuming didn't know, I know it's Sean Bean, walking spoiler, he always dies. But what did you think about that? Like at the end of the first film, one of the Fellowship's already gone.
There's a hell of an emotional weight as well, because you could see in his eyes how he's regretted what he's done with Frodo, and he's let the Fellowship down.
Mm-hmm.
He's let his companions and his future king down as well. I've noticed as well, I think in the movie, Boromir tries to take the ring like 3 times. He tries it once at Rivendell, once on the mountain, and once in the woodland. Mm-hmm. And it's quite interesting how he gets 3 arrows, like his punishment.
That's a good shout, mate. I never thought about that.
And then as he goes to get the 4th arrow, who turns up and saves him? His would-be king.
Yep. And he even says it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That beautiful speech and dialogue between them at the end, after, because Aragorn, obviously, he finishes Lurtz off. It's a good battle between them, actually.
Oh, that is probably one of my favourite sword fights in all of movies.
But this is so raw, isn't it?
And the shield gets thrown into the tree and it pins Aragorn to the tree.
Yes, it.
And he manages to get out. And then Aragorn has already stabbed him in the leg with that dagger.
Yeah, and then Lurtz licks the blood.
Pulls it out, licks it, and throws it. And then Aragorn deflects that, and then goes full on Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi.
That's it. He ignites
the green.
Goes
forward. Yeah, ignites the green, plows in, takes the arm off, but then he takes the head as well.
That's it. He takes the arm off, then he stabs him, and that Lurtz is just like, "Is that all you've got?"
And he pulls himself along the sword. Yeah.
Yep. I'll cut your head off for good measure as well. And fun fact as well. I mean that the scene where Lurtz throws the dagger at Aragorn was meant to be a stunt dagger. Turns out he threw the wrong one. He threw a real dagger at him. So when Viggo Mortensen's like hitting that dagger away, he's doing it because he's about to get stabbed. It's a true story. It's in the behind the scenes on the DVD. They accidentally put the real dagger in.
And the stunt man wasn't as good as deflecting the blade as Viggo Mortensen, apparently.
No, he wasn't.
So Viggo thought he'd just do it himself anyway.
Turned up and just knocked a Babe Ruth as well. But bits like that, which I love, like little behind the scenes trivia. And for those listening, I'm assuming you've got the DVDs. If you haven't, for some reason checked out the extras, holy moly, the extras are the best extras ever on any film of all time. It's just stunning. But yeah, that's that scene, because I know how much you love the ending to this scene with Aragorn and Boromir.
Yes, because we get Boromir is now dying, and Aragorn passes him his sword.
Yeah.
And you see that the horn is split in half, and you get the wonderful speech from Boromir with, "I would have followed you, my brother, my captain, my king." Gets me every time.
It did get me last time. I've got no shame in saying that. I was like, man, that is, especially again because you know what's coming, and he's like, and Aragorn vowed, "I will not let the White City or their people," he said, "our people," finally, because
our people, no, yeah.
Before that, he was saying, "Look, I wouldn't take the ring within 100 leagues of your city, mate." But now, and at the end, he's like, I will not let the White City or our people fall. And then, obviously, what Boromir says, just how you just said it, it's like, wow. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just we're just getting older, but it just hits harder and harder each time. But it's just damn fine acting as well.
Incredible.
I mean, those moments could always come off as a bit overblown or cheesy or undercooked if they're not done right. But both Sean Bean and Viggo Mortensen did such a good job of conveying what they both needed to in that scene.
It's wonderful.
And then Boromir gets a Viking burial, which is nice. They don't just leave him there, because I did actually think when I was watching, I was like, did they just leave him there? But then I remembered, no, they put him on the boat and over the waterfall, so he has an honourable death, and he goes out a hero. So even though he's died, we can look back and think, wow, like you said, he had his hero moment, and he did save Merry and Pippin, and obviously they went on to be saved by the end of it. Spoilers for the other films as well, but that ending, the end fight is incredible. And again, it's just set piece after set piece after set piece in this film, but it never ever feels like that. It never feels like, okay, next is Moria, and then next is Lothlorien or whatever, and then next is this. It
just flows. It flows. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and for a film which is 3.5 hours long, and there's 27.5 minutes of credits. That's how many people worked on these films. 27.5 minutes worth of just names. It's just wild,
brilliant.
Mate. It's wild.
Incredible.
We mentioned Weathertop when Frodo becomes face to face with the ring wraiths. I think it's pertinent to mention that. Like we see the wraiths, they're like portrayed with the music, which sounds a lot like The Omen, like Jerry Goldsmith's score of The Omen, like the chanting, the choir, the choral arrangements. When Frodo puts on the ring and he thinks, aha, you can't find me here, turns out they can.
Yeah.
And he gets stabbed by the Morgul blade. And again,
and they look so creepy.
You can't kill him off already. So it's like a Psycho moment where the main character dies already.
But what I love just before the Battle of Weathertop is yet again our lovely hobbits around the campfire, and you see Frodo coming, and you could just hear Merry and Pippin talk about their sausages, tomatoes, nice crispy bacon, and then Frodo rushes in, put it out, you fools!
That's it. And the sausages look so good, though.
Yeah, they kick all the sand and dirt all over them, man.
Yeah, I'm sure at one point I'm sure Sam tries to get them, but well, those sausages, like I don't know what they eat in the woodlands, but those sausages look fine. They look fire. I love some of those. And then the bloody ring wraiths turn up and party's over, guys. So.
The hobbits with the food, when they get given lambus bread.
Yes.
And and Legolas is like, one bite can fill the belly of a grown man. And then Mary looks at Pippin and he goes, how many did you eat? I've eaten 4. And then he burps.
Yes, it's just the way he looks at me. It's just like, how many did you eat? 4.
Yeah.
He's like, burp. What about breakfast? Second breakfast. 11's lunch, dinner, supper. And then and they throw the apple. And Pippin, he gets an apple thrown in his face. And again, according to the extras, the DVD extras, I can't remember, it's Viggo Mortensen who was throwing the apple, but he quite enjoyed just eating Billy Boyd with the apple every time. He kept finding ways to have to redo the scenes. When they're at the Prancing Pony and they're all sitting there and Merry comes back with this and it's like, what is that? It's like, this, my friends, is a pint. It comes in pints. He runs up to get his pint and I love that. Because after that, that's when they meet Stride. That's actually, again, the ring wraiths, they attack them in the bedroom and you think, they're going to kill them under the bed, but it's the old...
that scene is incredible filmmaking, because every time you think, they're going to stab them, and then they're not even in the same room.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
It's the way Sam opens his eyes when the blade goes in and he realises he's in a different room. And before that poor bloke gets trampled when the ring wraiths come through the gate at Bree and they just open the gate on that bloke, and it's like, well, you're no longer. But honestly, I have everything where we see the ring wraiths before that when they're chasing the hobbits through the woods, and there's that scene where all 4 of them are kind of crouched under the overpass, and the woody overpass, and the ring wraiths just leaning over above them, and the spider crawls on them.
Into the ring, and you see all like the creepy crawlies and the worms coming out of the ground. It's very sort of. That's what I mean. The darkness is coming. They as the ring wraiths are going, they bring the darkness into the film.
Yeah, somebody puts that spider on my shoulder. I'm not acting. I'm out of there. I hate spiders, mate. Of course, after that, you get the moment where Aragorn takes those fools down, the ring wraiths down by fire. One of the ones I wanted to mention actually is something that we haven't mentioned. It's probably one of the more. Obviously it's vital because it sets the film up. After we get the brilliant exposition at the beginning of the ring, obviously, where we find out about Sauron, men and elves versus Mordor for the freedom, how the ring passed out of knowledge for 2,500 years, and we find out about Gollum, and again we get that Omen-like music, and we see that beautiful shots over the map, like the visuals over the map before. But it's the party at the beginning, Bilbo's 111th party,
which is a surprisingly long age for a hobbit. Yes,
and obviously we know now that he got prolonged life, but obviously Ian Holm, God rest his soul, rest in peace, Ian Holm, wonderful actor and thespian as Bilbo, just gave that character that kind of really like warm sense to that character, and the way
it's brilliant.
You just want to give him a cuddle, and you just like, I wish that guy was my uncle or something. He's just like a really nice guy, but how he
fluffy hair.
He just looks, and the way he just smokes his pipe. He's like, he doesn't want to talk to him, and he's just grumpy. He's a bit like me when someone knocks on the door. Go away. But you can tell that he's yearning for something, and he's looking at his old maps of the Misty Mountains and his old heirlooms and trinkets he picked up from his travels with the dwarves and that. Something's on his mind, and of course we get to the party, and he gives that great speech, which I can never remember. He's like, I like half of you twice as much as I should, and I don't like twice as much of you, half as much as you deserve, or whatever he says. Brilliant moment. And he's like, now I've got to go, and he puts the ring on. But that line, I love that moment of just Bilbo and how we see him with Frodo, and he knows something's going on and we do, but the way he just disappears, and later on we see him in Rivendell, but just Bilbo's in general, like Ian Holm, God rest his soul. Just give it a shout out to Bilbo quickly.
Oh, he's amazing. After Ian Holm was so scary in Alien, as well, because I'd obviously seen Alien growing up, and then to see him in The Lord of the Rings, he was just a wonderful casting as Bilbo Baggins.
Yep. No,
he truly believed that he was a hobbit, and you could just have him narrating your life. You know, when he writes in his book, There and Back Again, you could just imagine Ian Holm sitting there narrating your life.
I really wish I could have had that. Ian, if we could bring you back, we would, and also to narrate our lives as well. But honestly, it's a good point, though, when you say you believe them as hobbits, because I know they had stand-ins and for like the certain shots, and there's a couple where you can noticeably see that, but or in other moments they get Elijah Wood and Sean Astin and Dominic and Billy to sit to they're on their knees in some shots where they need to, where they have to.
They did the whole depth perception with the camera, so
that as well is what I wanted to mention is they had the big or the standard size Hobbit hole bag end for the hobbits, and then Gandalf was for Ian Mckellen, they built a smaller size one to exaggerate his height. So he was acting against nothing sometimes, and so they put the two scenes together in post. Now I don't think you'd ever know if you weren't told that. And the scene with him and Bilbo, when you've got that depth perception, it's so cleverly done, mate. And I know 2001 wasn't exactly like the 1930s in terms of technology, but the way that they brought this to life so cleverly, which could have looked really bad if they'd done it wrong. And remember, I mean, there are films now which look rubbish. There are films then which look bad. But they managed to pull that off effortlessly. And even now I watch myself when Bilbo and Gandalf are in the same room thinking, how have they done that? And how have they done this so perfectly? And Ian Mckellen, he famously come out and said he wanted to quit acting during this because he wasn't acting against anyone. He had no one to act with, and he was getting really just depressed by it, same as in The Hobbit as well. But the way they did it, mate, was something else.
Yeah, and that famous scene where he bumps his head, that wasn't intentional. That was a total accident.
Ooh.
I just totally love it when Gandalf comes to the Shire, though. It's like that naughty uncle.
Yeah, with his fireworks and all the kids. Gandalf, fireworks, and he's
disturber of the peace.
Old Baggins is looking at him like, I need to let those kids down, and then off go the fireworks. And the old man is laughing as well.
Yeah, love it.
Like that beginning is so well. I'm talking about exposition. You get the bit at the beginning with like the history, but then you mention like the darkness is coming and the foreshadowing of evil straight away when Gandalf gives Frodo the ring. Because he keeps saying to Bilbo, leave the ring here, give it here. When Gandalf gives Frodo the ring and he said, "I'm riding off for answers," and then he goes to see and he sees that the fires of Barad-dûr, Mordor are raging. He knows something's up, and it's that slow build where, well, something's going on, but we're not quite sure. But the exposition is feeding it to us nicely, and then the ring wraiths turn up in the village next to the Shire. And one of my favourite scenes is like the ring wraith just like asks that geezer for directions. He sort of looks at him, he's like Shire, and he's like, I could just imagine him being like, right, guys, we're lost. We're going to have to ask one of these guys where we are. So you're the slowest. You can ask him. And it's just the way the guy just like terrified points and then just runs back in. But like the way they set it up, like they don't mess. If for a film which is 17 hours long, they don't waste any time. You know what I mean? They really do get in. They give you that exposition to start with about the war. You get the part you see, but we already know something's cooking. And then we get this, and then Gandalf, he's off. And then we get the ring wraiths fairly early on introduced.
Yeah, too right.
Saruman and Gandalf, there's that relationship when Saruman turns heel. Again, we barely even know Saruman, but then he immediately sides with Sauron. And Christopher Lee, again, another actor who's sadly left us, went on to be Count Dooku a year or so later in Attack of the Clones. But what about Christopher Lee as Saruman and how his character was in this film?
He was a total legend. I've discovered that he would read The Lord of the Rings every year.
Yeah, he was also in like a black metal band or something like that as well, up until his death. He was as well. He released black metal albums where he'd like speak like this Nordic verse, like his tongue and stuff like that. It's really weird.
What a voice. Incredible.
Honestly, mate.
But apparently Christopher Lee wanted to play Gandalf.
Mm.
So there was a bit of a soured relationship which grew into a good friendship with him and Ian McKellen.
The way they play off against each other, I mean, you'd never know, of course, but I thought those two are so well matched against each other.
Yeah, brilliant actors.
It's like Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen in the X-Men trilogy. Like seeing those two British actors as respectful enemies. It's like just the two of them against each other is brilliant.
That Shakespearean tone to their voices.
That's it. They bring something, and I think Peter Jackson even said that having Christopher Lee and people like Ian McKellen on set brought this gravitas and a presence, whereas obviously the other actors, they were fabulous, but having these kind of thespians and legends of stage and screen elevated the material even more, especially someone like Sir Christopher Lee, who, like you said, was a devotee. He's the only one who'd met Tolkien as well, who knew the material inside out. Having him on set, I mean, if you didn't know enough already, just to be able to say, "Oh, Chris, what happened in the book here?" and to have him say, "Actually, this isn't what would happen. This is what happened." So maybe you want to do that. It's invaluable.
Yeah. And the wizard duel is quite entertaining.
Wizard duel.
Yeah. And he banishes Gandalf to the top of the Tower of Orthanc.
That's it. I hate heights as well, so sod that.
Oh yeah, there's no safety barriers up there.
No, it is a bit like Star Wars, isn't it? Who ripped who off here?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's right. Because the Gandalf says to the hobbits, I'll meet you in Bree at the Prancing Pony. He ain't there because he's on top of that tower. There's that relationship between those two because he says, I've got to go and speak to my master, basically. And then immediately, okay, this Saruman, he's a bad guy. He's been swayed already. Well, he sees that Sauron is coming back. There's no way to defeat him, so he's just going to side. If you can't beat him, join him, type of thing. Again, very quickly, we don't have loads of moments where we see Saruman and Gandalf like being buddies or being master and apprentice. It's very much, thanks for popping along. This is the deal. If you're not with me, I will defeat you in battle.
Yeah.
And we get to see the eagle for the first time as well.
Yeah. Does that? You can also take it when Gandalf falls and he says, "Fly, you fools." Is he also hinting that they could call on the eagles? But I thought only Gandalf could really call on the eagles.
Yeah, I've heard that before, and because everybody always says, like, what film fans are like, there's a plot hole, when they could have just used the eagle. Well, I'm sure there's a reason why they couldn't. There's obviously why Gandalf wouldn't just do that otherwise, but I'm sure he didn't think, I could use the eagles, but let's test these guys, actually. Let's make them go through hell. Gandalf didn't seem that type of person. But yeah, it could have been. I mean, look, if you want to look at it literally, as to how they could, how Gandalf got out of scrapes and situations, he flew.
Yeah, for the shit. Let's just fly there.
Yeah. Could you imagine if at the end of it, he was like, you know what? All this time he could have used the eagles, but I thought it'd be more fun not to. It's like, Boromir's dead. This has happened. Nice one, mate. Yeah. You died as well. I don't subscribe to that theory at all, but I've seen some very compelling videos online, giving evidence or reasons why, and they are compelling. They're fun to watch, but I think that's just his way. Because one of the things Gandalf says an awful lot in these films and in the Hobbit films is run. He always seems to be saying run, run. So maybe they're just like, please just have him say something else, like fly. And I think that was what was in the book anyway, like fly, you fools, is the actual lingo. But if people wanted to make it out to be that, then I'm sure they could. Are you subscribing to the theory that that's what he meant or could have meant?
No, I just think he was on about them escaping. Just get out of here before in case that Balrog came back.
Yeah.
If the immense power of Gandalf, if he couldn't stop it, then they have no chance.
No, and they're also up against a load of stormtrooper orcs as well, who couldn't fire their arrows for toffee, to be polite. It's great. There's hundreds of orcs, and they missed the Fellowship every time they fired an arrow. But old Legolas would turn around and take 5 out of one go. That's what I love about Legolas. He does the unbelievable, and in this trilogy makes it look cool, even in like some of the more outlandish things he does later on in the films. But I love the whole Moria scene and the different landscapes we get. We mentioned that like Moria is so different visually and texturally and aesthetically to someone like Rivendell, which even though that is like a heaven in itself, is so different to the Shire, and that's different to Lothlorien and Bree. Everything, and that's what I'm saying about the scope. Everything is just so big and vast, or somewhat quaint like the Shire, but they all feel like they're different. I love that, and I know that sounds silly, but they all feel like they are different places, and they've had to travel to get to these places. It doesn't feel like they're an
you can
extension
feel
of
the
that.
distance.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
You can feel it feels travelled, and to this day the film still looks incredible. It's bordering on 20 years old, and it just looks wonderful.
there's not many parts of the CGI in any of the three films. There are a few, but there's not much that you look at and think, oh, it's a bit, they could update that nowadays. But honestly, for the most part, it looks great. And I can't remember what they're called, but those huge statues, like
The kings of Aragorn's ancestors.
that's it. I can't think what they're called now, but those statues, and I love the scale shot they give, like the scope shot, where you see the boat and you just see the foot of the statue. Like that thing is massive.
It takes you back to the old Jason and the Argonaut type films.
Yeah.
They'd always go up against something epic, like very like Greek mythology as well, wasn't it? The whole giant stone men.
And they showed the stone trolls as well in this from the Hobbit trilogy, which is fun. And again, for whatever those films are much maligned, whatever, they do tie in excellently well with these three films. And there are other trilogies where maybe they don't tie in quite so well, but whether or not we like the Hobbit films, they do tie in well. And those statues they're the Argonath. That's it. They represent the old kings of Gondor. That's what they are. So yeah, it's the ancestors of Aragorn. But yeah, mate, those again, something else like world building lore. You don't see much about them, but in one line you find out what they were and what they represent, and you see the size. And even now, Aragorn's like, I've always wanted to see these. And again, before we move on, after Gandalf dies, there's a few mentions of like, where's Gandalf? Boromir says Gandalf's death's not going to be in vain. Galadriel senses Gandalf's fell, and he's like, without Gandalf, all hope is lost. And Galadriel's male counterpart says that classic meme line now, tell me, where is Gandalf? For I much desire to speak with him. As soon as I saw that...
Fuck off.
Yeah, that's it. Taking the hobbits to Isengard. As soon as I stopped watching it, I went onto YouTube and I watched that again. I was like, I can't. Every time that guy comes on, telling me, where is Gandalf? For I much desire to speak with him. I was like, right, dee. It took me back to that. I love that. Oh, mate. But even then, you get to see about Galadriel. You find out how powerful it is because, like I said, she senses that Gandalf's fell, and she speaks telepathically with Frodo. She's like, you're the one who's seen the eye. And Gimli also says, I think it is well, like she was, I could hear her voice in my head. So we find out straight away how powerful Galadriel really is, like the Lady of the Forest.
Super powerful. What is the significance of the blade that is given, the dagger that's given to Aragorn?
I'm not entirely sure, mate. I think it may have just been like a fine blade, basically. Unless somebody out there is listening can tell us the significance of that blade.
Because they make a big point of looking at the blade and he looks down upon it. Unless they foreshadowing he's going to need the dagger in the battle, otherwise he might die at the end.
I think that may be what it was. I think it was just a bit of foreshadowing, telegraphing, yeah.
Yeah.
But if anyone does know, let us know. Because again, this is interesting. We don't pertain to know everything about the films or the books, but for those little moments like that, if anyone knows, do let us know. I guess for me, a couple of other things I like was when Frodo departs at the end, and before he gets on the boat, Frodo hears the voice of Gandalf again, and one of the many lines, like when Gandalf's telling him decide what to do with the time we're given. That beautiful quote. Gandalf is just like a quote machine in this film. Obviously, Frodo departs on the boat. Sam follows him. You can't swim. Frodo obviously then saves him, and Sam's like, "I promise not to leave you, and I don't intend to break that promise." And when they look to Mordor, and they're talking about the Fellowship, and he's like, "I don't suppose we'll ever see them again." And Sam says, "We may yet, Mr. Frodo. We may yet." And I'm glad you're with me, Sam. The start of that.
The true hero of it all.
That's it. And yeah, Sam was there the whole time.
Samwise the gardener.
Captain, leader, legend. He was there the whole time, like taking fools down with his pan during the fight with the cave troll as well. His frying pan. I loved it. But yeah, that ending, obviously, we get to see the more so the blooming bromance between Sam and Frodo, sorry, which we knew was already there, but that sets up perfectly the next installment of the trilogy. But I know one thing we haven't mentioned, and I know we mentioned it in passing, but the score. Howard Shore's score for this film. All three of them, but I think Howard Score's score is breathtaking. It is honestly breathtaking.
It's one of the most incredible movie soundtracks ever.
Yeah, honestly.
But I think the beauty of it was that he was involved from the beginning while they were filming. So then I think the first scene he saw was the Mines of Moria.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got some of the cast in and they all sat around watching the scene as he built the music. And they got to listen to the choir. And, it's incredible.
Oh, mate, I can't. I did a show about composers recently, but I spoke about Howard Shore and how much this soundtrack affects me every time I hear it, and also how much I appreciate and love the work of the recently departed Ennio Morricone as well. That show's out there to listen to. But Howard Shore, I went into depth and detail on that show, so do go listen to that, guys, if you haven't, for why I think this is one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. But it's just the way it evokes something inside of you. It feels like it feels like Middle Earth. And I've seen so many people say if Tolkien was alive, whether he would have liked the films or not, because obviously they're very action heavy. Most people, or people who knew Tolkien or whether said one thing he would have loved was the score for this, and that must be like the greatest compliment you can get as a composer, like Howard Shore.
Oh yeah, but Howard Shore, he hasn't got many other movies that stand out as big as this.
No, I mean he's done big films in the 90s and that, but not anything to this scope. I mean, not many people have, but even comparatively, like anywhere near this, he's done big films, but yeah, this was something else. It
was totally out of this world. I honestly I don't know how they come up with it sometimes.
Well, that's it.
The sound is perfect when you're in the Shire, when you're in Moria, when you're in Rivendell. It's just incredible.
The ring raves and that, like I said, the choral and the choir. Like it sounds like the Jerry Goldsmith score for The Omen. It's like it's like creepy as hell, literally. And I always said about composers, I can't fathom how somebody can hear like 50, 60 different instruments in their head, or listen to something and think we need a rolling flute to go there or something. I just don't know how. And obviously, I am not a composer, of course, and that's why I have so much respect for any composer out there. But to create something of this magnitude is unbelievable. And something like the Concerning Hobbits is beautiful. The Breaking of the Fellowship, the Khazad Doom scores, like I say, Rivendell. Like, oh my God. I'm loath to say that the films wouldn't have been as epic without the score, because the films, the everything about these films are epic. But like some of the long shots of the Fellowship making their way across New Zealand, you take a score out, you lose something. You lose something from those big epic moments. And I know that the same can be said for so many other films, but honestly, what Howard Shore managed to do for this film, not speaking about the other, but for this film was, mate, honestly, I'm not lost for words often because I've got a big old mouth, but without meaning to go like too many superlatives on a show which is all about gushing, but honestly, I'm in awe of these scores, and there's just something magical, something ethereal about what Howard Shore did for this. It just feels right.
Yeah, and how he blends it in with like the Gandalf and Bilbo singing as well.
Yes, mate.
They're both singing the same song. I just love it. It's so magical.
Oh, it's just beautiful. Every time I hear the Hobbit theme, the Concerning Hobbits song, every time it brings a smile to my face. I said it on that episode and I'll say it again. It's just involuntarily just break out into a smile, because it just it almost takes me to the Shire, and it reminds me of seeing this film and the wonder and the joy I felt watching it. And one of the best places in the world you could ever visit is a YouTube comment section for any of the scores and soundtracks for Lord of the Rings, because every single person is positive. They're quoting the films. They're talking about being in the Shire, wishing they could be there, and it's like the most positive place ever. So if you're on a downer, guys, check out the YouTube comments for any of these songs. Trust me.
That's a rarity for YouTube.
I know. Honestly, YouTube, that Moss Isley, but in these songs, not at all. No scum and villainy whatsoever. Everyone has comes together. It's like, I'm sure there are detractors in the Middle Earth fandom, but you wouldn't know it from like visiting these certain places. So yeah, honestly, go and check those out. Everyone is just happy and is wishing they were a Hobbit. But yeah, mate, the score is one of the greatest scores I think of all time.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, that's the majority of my major moments and my favourite moments from rewatching it. Before we move on to anything maybe which wasn't, did you have any last things to add on, like the positive parts?
I think it's all been pretty positive. I can't find a negative with the Fellowship of the Ring.
No, there's nothing wrong with that
Do you
whatsoever.
have any negatives?
No, not really. Apart from, you mentioned obviously the wizard duel between Gandalf and Saruman. I thought some of the cuts, I thought they were slightly iffy in the fight scenes. Rewatching it, I was like, some of them felt a bit jarring, some of the cuts. But that didn't take away from the scene, but it's just noticeable in the film, which is so well paced and so well cut, that in that scene it just felt a bit off. Something felt off. And before that, there's a shot of Gandalf. This was in the extended, not the theatrical, but there's a shot of Gandalf riding to Isengard to meet Saruman, and he's riding down a path, and there's quite clearly like modern fencing and chains up. He's riding through the middle. I was like, that literally is like
straight to the middle of Hyde Park.
It is like walking through like Windsor or something like Hyde Park. I was like, it is in the
Please keep off the grass.
It was. He might as well just had the sign saying, "Yeah, please don't feed the animals." But I mean, there's nothing in this film at all which I can put as a negative. Those things are nitpicky. Oh, some of the cuts are a bit awry. Oh, boo-hoo, wow. No, there was a modern bit of chain and fence there. Oh, wow. Honestly, there's nothing in this film which I can fault whatsoever. The dialogue, the performances, the action, the CGI, the effects at the time, I think were excellent. The scope, honestly, I can go on forever, mate. There was nothing I could find which was negative.
It's as incredible as Gandalf's fireworks.
It was, and that's how I felt, like that rotund farmer who was grinning at the beginning. That was me. That was all of us.
Yeah.
So I asked you guys out there, you faithful listeners, what did you think of The Fellowship of the Ring? And 93% of you were fans of the movie, which obviously meant 7% of you weren't. We'll speak to you guys afterwards, but 93%. So before we move on to the comments, mate, does that surprise you at all? Is that not high enough?
There should have been 100%. I reckon the people who voted it down have probably never seen the film.
Or they're orcs or something, yeah.
Or they're orcs.
But again, as I always say, film is subjective. This won't be for everyone. I certainly hope people who didn't like the film can at least appreciate the technical side of it, like the sheer majesty of these films. But a couple of comments, a guy I know quite well, Sean Hudson, heard of him. He said this and the other two are as close to movie perfection as possible. Jocasta Who, he said so many great movie moments in one movie, along with the You Shall Not Pass gif. Luke Thorne, for me, the first entry in the trilogy is a very decent one, due to the very good performances from the star-studded cast, along with direction, script, tense atmosphere, dramatic moments, and brilliant technical aspects. Well said, mate. Eric Eilerson, King, handsome. This game is the Michael Fassbender gif. Perfection. My buddies from Down Under, the Fly on the Wall podcast. An amazing cinema experience and brilliant movie. Just kept getting better and better, and every set piece more epic than the last. I was sad when it ended. Jeremy, J.E. Camp 86. It's one of my absolute favourite films of all time, and my favourite of the trilogy. Steve Sellers, my favourite of the three because of the adventuring party flavour of it. All things Hulk talk. Amazing. Brian Dockery, it's precious. Moving on, we had Nothing But Real Talk, said, best trilogy, don't at me. Lana Rowe Willis, loved the books and loved the movies, but they couldn't tell me which ones they preferred the most. McNamara Jedi, may just be the best of them all. Spending so much time with the Fellowship as a whole was a huge plus. Kelly Hoston, if you want him, come and claim him. Love it. And the Movie House said, fantastic adventure. And before I go on anywhere else, mate, that's something, that one from McNamara Jedi there, something we didn't actually mention, but this is the only film, other than the end of the third film, where the Fellowship are actually all together. And I think that's why this film is so powerful and strong, because everyone is together.
Yeah, right up until the dying moments of the film.
Yeah, right until Boromir screws up.
Yeah. Do you think the ring would have made it to Mordor if they were stayed together, though?
It's a great what if, isn't it, mate? I don't think it would have done, just because by the fact that they split up, they all obviously by splitting up, it almost split the armies and gave Sam and Frodo a clearer path. but it also gave them their own journeys, which is obviously the whole point of the films. Everybody had their own journey of self-discovery or whatever it might have been, and without them splitting up, no, I don't think so, mate. I don't think they're making it.
Yeah, and by them splitting up, they distracted the Eye of Sauron because he was constantly looking at all different locations.
Yeah, and then obviously when we get to the Two Towers and everything that happens there, and then Return of the King, there's enough going on to keep old Sauron a little bit distracted from those little hobbits. But no, it's a good question, mate. I don't think they will. I've got guys out there on Lukey Boy's point there. If the gang had stayed together, the Fellowship hadn't been broken, would they have made it to Mordor? Like, ignore the books, like using like logics in the film and in the first film. Are they making it to Mordor? I don't think they are, and I don't think Lukey Boy does either.
No.
Nope. So, Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, as a trilogy opener, I think it was magnificent. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, mate, but in terms of trilogies, we've mentioned obviously we've got Star Wars. Harry Potter's not a trilogy, but it's a saga franchise. In terms of sagas and franchises, Star Wars, Potter, things like Alien, and all these other ones which I'm forgetting. Is this one of the best trilogy or saga / series / trilogy day openers of all time?
Totally. It is a beast. It's not just some conjurer of cheap tricks. It is an epic film from start to finish, right up until the credits roll in Return of the King.
Mate, and those credits in Return of the King are something else, but even the end credit music by Enya, it is Enya, but even that's awesome in the Fellowship. And where else can you hear the word man flesh, Luke? How do you say it?
Man flesh.
There we go. If your wife is listening, she probably thinks, what kind of phone calls is this guy on about? What phone lines he dialed. From start to finish, from 1, 2, and 3, even if you have read the books like I had, certain scenes played out in my mind exactly how I envisioned them and remember them as like a 9 or 10-year-old lad, especially in the third film, which is a testament to how much love went into this. And I think that is something to end on, is the amount of, we've mentioned it already, but the love, determination, effort, passion, sweat, tears that went into creating not just this film but the entire trilogy is something which there's a reason why we don't see films made back to back to back very often, and because of the absolute toil it took. And in 2001, filming 3 films of this scale back to back to back was just a massive, like the film itself was an epic undertaking.
It was, and the fact that the sheer amount of effort that went into that, the Fellowship of the Ring and the other 2 films, is just phenomenal. And the fact that they just constantly flew out to all these sets, they weren't just green screening it in a studio.
Yeah,
they literally made it believable, and I think that's what the best thing about it is, that you believe it.
That I hadn't thought about. That's a great point to end up on as well. Yeah, that this was all done as much as possible on screen, and it shows in the performances. When you've got something tangible to act against, your performances will always be better. So, final word then: the Hobbit trilogy. Did you see it? Did you like it?
Did I see it? Did I like it? Yeah, I like The Unexpected Journey, the first one.
Yep.
But then the CGI just gets a bit over the top, and it totally loses track of the book a little bit, and he's trying to shoe in too much of the Lord of the Rings canon, and it takes away from the whole Hobbit movie, the whole shoeing in like Legolas and things just for fan service.
And Tario as well. I just wanted to know what your thoughts on that were, not to have a bashing session whatsoever.
I literally, the film starts to go downhill once the dwarfs leave the Shire. The whole trilogy there's magical moments, but then you get to the point where you have the Battle of the Five Armies and you have a CGI Billy Connolly riding around on a pig.
Right, honestly,
it just takes you out of the film.
And if you watch those 3 first and then the Lord of the Rings trilogy, there's a massive, and I don't mean that to be derogatory in terms of quality, but I mean like visually. Whereas in this film, again, we didn't mention, but all of the orcs, all of the Uruk-hai are guys and girls in suits, in makeup, in prosthetics, in armour. They are real. They're there. They're fighting. Obviously, in The Hobbit, they're not. For why that, and we know that there was issues with that. It was meant to be 2 films with Guillermo del Toro. They brought Peter Jackson in last minute. They basically said, "Right, here's some money. We're not going to give you any extended time. Make the film." He's writing the script on set and all that kind of stuff. But and I'd never say that he didn't put as much love and effort into that trilogy. But I think he even says it himself. They were winging it the whole time. Whereas on this trilogy,
he didn't have the time.
No, he had 4 years of planning for this one, and it shows. I'm sure if he wanted to, if he had his way, I'm sure he would have given The Hobbit the exact same treatment with real life actors playing the orcs, playing everybody else. But like when Legolas is fighting, I can't remember the orc's name now at the end in the third film and the second film on Lake Town, it's like it loses something because it's not really there. It's not, you know what I mean?
It doesn't look real. It looks like a cartoon.
Yeah, but then something like Smaug looked incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could have tried and condensed those into 2 films, but I know it's not as sexy for the studio to have a dual film. A trilogy sounds a lot more sexy and a lot better. So, but it was detrimental. But like you say, actually, every film, as much as I really do enjoy that, I enjoy the first one a fair bit. I did like the Battle of the Five Armies just because it is like a huge battle, but I don't feel like the ending was earned because by the end of it, I still couldn't name the dwarfs. So, okay, well, I don't know who you are, and I can't remember who you are. We didn't do anything.
It's like trying to name Santa's reindeers.
No, it is like Rudolph. You're probably Dasher. You could be, I don't know. You could be Pooper. I don't know, but they just unfortunately, they had 9 hours, and the dwarves didn't have any development whatsoever apart from Thorin and to an extent Philly and Killy. Other ones like Balin got a little bit here and there, but yeah, there was so much they could have done. But you know what I mean? I still enjoy them on an entertainment level. I wasn't so keen on the second film, but I love Smaug. I really liked that character. And basically everything Bilbo did, I loved. But Bilbo wasn't in his own trilogy nearly anywhere near long enough. His scenes with Gollum in the first film were boss.
Yeah, the riddles in the dark, brilliant.
That's it, riddles in the dark, that's it. His scenes with Smaug in the second film, awesome. It just wasn't enough Bilbo, and I love Martin Freeman. I guess, trying to compare anything to The Lord of the Rings, I think is unfair, because to me, I think this could be the greatest trilogy of all time, and I know that is a subjective thing, and people will argue and disagree because whether you look at it on a technical aspect or a personal or nostalgic point of view, I just think the 3 films as a whole are consistently excellent. Whereas other trilogies have excellent moments but are not let down, but there's either like a drop off in films where they start rocky and get better. I honestly think these 3 films they actually get better as they go along, almost. Though I think The Fellowship may just be the best of the lot. But I also think The Two Towers might be the best as well. So that's what I mean. And Return of the King has got all those awesome moments in it for Frodo. So I honestly think this could be the greatest trilogy of all time. Lukey boy, I've made that statement. I don't expect you to agree with me necessarily, but what do you think about that before we leave?
I totally agree with you. It's a beautiful trilogy, well made, wonderful characters. To be honest, I can't find anything wrong with it.
On that, the King of Wales has spoken. He has spoken. It's a beautiful trilogy, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I fully agree with it. So that does bring an end to the Fellowship of the Ring episode of The Back Row. Check in a few days' time when we do our 6-hour extended edition of this episode, because Luke doesn't realise that, but he ain't going anywhere till tomorrow morning now. Lukey boy, thank you so much for coming on and giving your time tonight, mate.
Oh, thank you, mate. You're an absolute legend.
No, it's a pleasure, mate. We mentioned the photography beforehand and 1/4 portion, where if people are listening to this thinking, this guy sounds like a right king, which they would be right in saying so, where can the world find you when those ventures online?
On Instagram, it's at Snicked87 or at 1/4 portion. And on Twitter, it's 1Q portion.
Go check it out, guys, if you're a fan of pop culture or Star Wars. And Snicked, that's Wolverine's noise for his claws?
Yeah, it's the way they write it in the comic books.
Right, because I never knew that when I started. I was like, what on earth all that about? I was like, that must be his middle name. Snicked Summerfield. It turns out I wasn't, but yeah. Guys, go and follow Luke. The photography is immense, and I generally mean that. And the 1/4 portion is just a smorgasbord of positivity. So go check that out. And in these times, goddamn, what we could do with some of that. If you want to find me, whatIwatched.tonight.co.uk, Twitter, Instagram, What I Watched Tonight. We're also on Facebook, What I Watched Tonight as well. If you like what you hear, please tell your friends, please tell the world, please leave a review on your podcast provider of choice. If you know a Lord of the Rings fans, tell them there's a couple of guys who are chatting about the Fellowship of the Ring. And if they want to listen, do so. If you don't like what you've just heard, don't tell anyone. No point. Keep it to yourselves, please. So, guys, thank you for listening. Luke, thank you for giving your time. But until next time from me, see ya.